Let's compare the old waterfall methodology with Agile or Scrum so we have understanding of this fundamental shift. In old approach of software development with waterfall methodology, we have stage-gated phases. In this traditional waterfall or plan-driven project, you first do planning for everything you need to develop for a project, gather all of the requirements and do deep analysis. That sounds like a good idea, but it really is not in most cases, because the business is not going to get the highest priority requirement until they get the lowest priority requirement. And that is because we pack them all in a huge package or a batch. We then process all of the requirements in analysis. Then we throw specification over the value development team for development. Then when we are done with all the development, we pass it to QA team for testing. By the way, testing reminds me that the time we plan for testing is usually not accurate, as we don't know how many bugs or issues we're gonna get, right? Then we do integration of all of the components and get more nasty surprises. Validation also takes some time to fix issues. And finally, we hand it over to operations or release team for deployment. We deploy all of the stuff at once at the end of the development cycle. This whole process might take a year or two. In some cases, I've seen projects that have been in constant development for 5 or even 6 years without shipping. Let's be optimistic and say it's a 1-year project. So what the business will get after 11 months? The answer is nothing. And what if you run out of money or time for the project when you have completed 80% of your project? What you will bring to the market? The answer? Nothing. Okay, let's assume you are lucky and on time as planned. You will have all the components integrated magically and working at the end. Guess what? This is the time your customer get the first opportunity to give you the feedback on how well you did. And if you did it wrong, most likely, then you have to repeat the whole cycle again. And what if you don't have more money and time left for the project? Is it acceptable by customers in today's fast-moving world and business opportunities? I don't think so. Even you are lucky and made it all, the business won't be happy because it's too late to receive the business value. It's indeed a recipe for frustration. The change is required early because A, the good idea you were working a year ago may not be a good idea today or will obsolete in a few months. And B, customers don't know what they want. Yes, they don't. I can tell you from my experience that they don't even when they see it. But when they start using and interacting with the software you just delivered, they know what they want and give you the feedback. Okay, enough talk. You might guess it already that this makes it very high risk approach. So what you need is earlier feedback and ability to react. Let's see how Scrum or Agile solve this. In Scrum, we do a little bit of all these activities, obviously a smaller scope, and all these activities on a recurring and regular basis. We pick the highest priority requirement first and then deliver working software in small iterations and start getting feedback. This early feedback allows us to change the requirement or scope iteration to iteration, and even sometime during iteration. Remember the Agile principle? Deliver working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with preference to the shorter time scale. This is exactly what we're doing here. This lowers the risk, as we are able to ship at any time after each iteration. It also increases our ability to deliver working software to our customer earlier because maybe we can deliver a subset of features that they want sooner, and business start receiving that value or return on investment before even the project is finished. And our risk is limited only to the cost of single iteration. Risk is actually decreased in time in Agile in most cases. In Agile, if we fail on first delivery, the risk of failure is low, and we can quickly learn from the customer feedback and pivot or adopt accordingly. Every sprint, i.e. for 1 or 4 weeks, we have opportunity to change. In waterfall though, the risk is huge and increase over time because of having limited ability to deal with uncertainty. Remember the question we asked if we run out of money and time in traditional waterfall project? What can we deliver? The answer was nothing. Let's ask the same question for Agile. In Agile and Scrum, if we run out of money or time, we can still deliver highest priority work and value to business because everything is production ready and can be done deliverable. And if actual cost of project is more than the business value of the remaining work, we can and should actually end the Agile project early. The Agile project don't run out of money or time. They run out of business value. Agile and Scrum is sounding very good. But hey, in real world, we need to strive for Agile values and principles we talked about. And to be honest, this is the hard part. Changing the mindset of people, the culture shift, is really, really hard. Understanding, maybe easy peasy, but doing and being Agile, really hard. Agile requires that the customer also are able to think iterative, think Agile, so they can accept partial deliveries and start testing it before project completely done. If the user and customer don't start testing at first delivery, the risk will increase. If management think waterfall and project run Agile, this will still fail. Many project fails due to management and customer expect full deliveries, but developers work Agile and deliver partially. The clue here is communication between development team, product owner, and the steering board. I will end this recording with repeating one of the Agile principle. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. Okay, let's see how the flow of Agile software development or iteration looks like. First, obviously you have some ideas, what you can build. This list of ideas is called backlog. You prioritize your ideas based on business value, effort, risk, etc. And maybe you do a planning meeting to take smaller chunk of work that a cross-functional Agile team can do based on their capacity for their iteration. The Agile team takes that work off the backlog and call this chunk of work as an iteration backlog. Then they do development, develop the features during iteration. They do all the activities we discussed previously like design, development, testing in that iteration. And finally, they produce a production-ready shippable product. This shippable product is then shipped to customers or released whenever it makes sense for the business. This iteration cycle is repeated as many times as business need more features to be developed. As we know, the Agile principles talk about regular delivery of working software, and that way Agile team develop working software on a regular basis, working iteratively, allow more flexibility for changes, and that way we achieve agility. This is very common and general flow of Agile development cycle and not specific to any practice like Scrum. Scrum is no different, but it provides your framework to execute this iteration more optimally. Let's talk about Scrum now. Okay, let's talk about Scrum. It's the same diagram, but have you noticed a difference in terms? The backlog in Scrum is product backlog. Iteration scope in Scrum will be sprint scope. Iteration backlog will be sprint backlog. So basically, we are calling the iteration as sprint. We call production ready product as potentially shippable because we may not ship it right away. It's business decision when to ship it. Let's start from the start again and to see end-to-end workflow of Scrum sprint cycle. I just want to show you a big picture at start, but don't worry, I'll talk about everything in detail later. The product backlog is prioritized to-do list of product backlog item. These items are basically requirements. There is a role in Scrum called product owner, who create this backlog of containing wish list of features that he will like to see in software, and then he prioritize it and keep it prioritized all the time. Product owner takes the input from customers and stakeholders to create this backlog, but product owner owns the backlog and adds changes and reprioritize as needed. It is an always changing, dynamically prioritized list of requirements ordered by business value. Requirements are broken down into user stories by product owner. We'll talk about more on user stories later. But product owner is not the only role in Scrum. In Scrum, we have 3 roles. First is the product owner. that we just discussed. Another one is the role of Scrum Master. He helps the Scrum team to succeed. He removes any obstacles that slow down the development team. Obstacles are called impediments in Scrum. He facilitates Scrum meetings. He also acts as a gatekeeper to shield the development team from outside influence, so no one unnecessarily interrupts the team's work. By the way, who is the team we're discussing here? Let's talk about the team now. Scrum team is basically a development team. But in Scrum, development team doesn't mean programmers only. It includes anyone who work to develop software. That may include business analysts, architects, testers, UX designers, of course, developers or programmers as well. It's self-organizing, cross-functional team who develops the product backlog items as directed by product owner and turn these items into an incremental functionality. Team also estimate the size of backlog items before committing the work. This team is committed to deliver working software at the end of the sprint. So these are the three roles we have in Scrum: product owner, Scrum Master, and the Scrum team. Please note the color of each team icon. You know, the little guys at the bottom. And I'll be using the same colors icons in this diagram to depict where each role fit into Scrum sprint. Okay, now we have all the roles to run the Scrum. Let's move the items from backlog and see what happens next. Next, you do sprint planning meeting to decide the scope of your sprint. As I mentioned previously, the sprint is Scrum version of an Agile iteration. This period can be 1 to 4 weeks long, where the team gets stuff done. As you can tell by seeing the role icons, that's product owner, Scrum Master, and the Scrum team are part of this meeting. In this meeting, the Scrum team decides how much work they can commit in the sprint. Product owner and the team agrees the next product increment and pull a small chunk from the top of the backlog and move these selected items in another mini backlog called sprint backlog, so they can track the work of this sprint. Team then have to decide how to implement product backlog items they designed it and determine all the tasks they need to perform to complete each backlog item. Tasks are basically a breakdown of product backlog item, or in other words, all the steps you need to perform to complete that story or a product backlog item. At this stage, they can estimate each task in hours if required by the business. That's it. And we have a sprint backlog ready, and we are good to go with the development and running the sprint. During the sprint, every day, team meets together to share progress with each other to plan the day. Development team members explain 3 things. What did I do yesterday to help the team meet the sprint goal? What will I do today to help the team to meet the sprint goal? Is there anything in my way that is blocking me or the team? If so, we call this blocking thing or anything which is slowing the team down impediment in Scrum. It could be a broken computer or a broken chair. Whatever it is, a Scrum Master should note it down and remove this impediment as soon as he can. Daily Scrum meetings should not be more than 15 minutes and typically held standing up in front of the task board to visualize the status of all the work. As you move the tasks on the board, you see the burn down charts get updated. Burn down chart is a progress report to show the status, how quickly the team is burning the work. This helps the team to focus on today's plan. And side conversations are taken offline. When team is done with development, the Scrum team meet with product owner and stakeholder to show what they have accomplished during the sprint. We call this meeting a sprint review. During the sprint review, the team shows the demo of working software, the real software, not the PowerPoint slides. They all collaborate about what was done in sprint. At the end of the sprint, the work should be potentially shippable increment, which is packaged and ready to hand over to customer. At this time, when the business decides, they ship it to the customer. After the sprint is over, the team held sprint retrospective meeting, where team reviews what went well that they should continue, but more importantly, what didn't went well, and they should consider to change and adopt a new approach. This meeting is aligned with inspect and adopt pillars we discussed earlier. By the end of this meeting, the Scrum team should have identified improvements in regards to people, relationships, process, and tools that they should implement in the next sprint or maybe later. As the next sprint begins, the team choose another chunk of the backlog and begin the whole cycle again and again and again until the cost of development and opportunity is more than the business value. That's all, my friend. That's all about Scrum. And don't worry if you are struggling to understand something at this point. I will cover every single thing in details later.